Oh hey there, Kara Long here for Rev3 Games. You know, I've reviewed a lot of stuff over the past year, but today is a day of new beginnings, because today is my first ever Wii U review. I've been playing ZombiU pretty much non-stop since we got our system last week, and now that I'm finished, I have but one bit of advice for you. Get ready to scream bloody murder. It wouldn't be entirely unfair to say that ZombiU's got a lot going against it. A pricey new console, an unfamiliar control scheme, and a name that looks and sounds like a spelling error are enough to scare even the most hardcore gamer. And yet, underneath all the gimmickry and rose-colored hype lies something truly unique. Something that sets ZombiU apart from almost every other game out there. And no, I'm not talking about the system that it's on. In terms of formula, ZombiU hits all the major points of a good survival horror. Limited resources, dark winding hallways, creepy music, little to no sense of reprieve. It's as exhausting as it is fun, and yes, you will die many, many times.
I don't think I can watch you die anymore.
As a matter of fact, death is one of the game's most distinguishing characteristics. Rather than one main protagonist, the player character is constantly changing, respawning as someone new every time the player dies. The game builds tension by forcing you to kill your zombified former self in order to retrieve your items, but more importantly, it de-emphasizes the importance of self altogether, by ensuring that the focus is never on you and always on the greater task at hand. Like most games of its kind, the viral outbreak in ZombiU is shrouded in mystery, mentioned only in the ramblings of 18th century astronomer John Dee, a man who predicted that a great blight would befall the city of London in the year 2012. Found documents and tape recordings will fill in a fair bit of backstory for you, but the specifics aren't really your concern. For a good majority of the game, your goal is to simply survive. Helping you out and providing support along the way is the Prepper, a guy who's dedicated his life to defending the prophecy and now provides shelter for survivors of the plague.
You might not believe it, but I knew this was coming a long time ago.
The base of your operations are located in his safe house, and from there you'll travel the city via underground sewers, returning every so often to scour for supplies and turn in missions. Resources are scarce, so conservation is essential. Players spawn with only a light source, a cricket bat, and a loaded pistol to their name. The light source regenerates quickly when depleted, and the cricket bat is non-degradable, so you always have a backup weapon, but neither is particularly ideal. Zombies can take up to 8 hits with the cricket bat before dying, and even some of the game's better guns can take at least 2 headshots to bring one down. There's just barely enough ammo for every zombie in the game, so you'll need to be creative with how you use it. Pick one zombie off at a time and abide by the golden rule of ABS. Always be scavenging. In addition to constantly searching for bigger and better guns, you'll also want to keep an eye out for weapon upgrades, which can be applied at various workbenches throughout the city. Every location in the game has a finite amount of loot, but finding that loot isn't always so cut and dry. That's where your pad scanner comes in. By pressing the left trigger of the gamepad, the player enters an AR mode that effectively scans the room around you, marking any enemies or items as white dots and allowing the player to tag them and analyze their contents. You can also use this feature strategically to plan a path around a nearby group of zombies, or to decode hidden messages needed to solve the game's many puzzles. Holding the gamepad up is a lot less intimidating than it appears at first glance, and scanning items actually became one of my favorite parts of the game. It's like unwrapping a present, except in this case the present is a dead, rotting corpse. I'll take it. The gamepad screen has a few other uses, namely inventory management. Players have 6 quick slots on the home screen for things like weapons and medipacks, and everything else is stored in your bug-out bag. The screen also doubles as your menu system, allowing you to interact with everything via touch and drag. This has been a key advertised feature of the gamepad for quite some time, and while it's a promising idea in theory, I can't say the device's touchscreen is necessarily optimized for touch and drag movement, or the repetitive tapping required in certain parts of the game. Thankfully, those moments are short-lived, and by making all the menus real-time, the game encourages you to spend as little time on the gamepad as possible. A built-in map radar will alert you to nearby moving creatures, but don't think that means you can rest easy. There are still plenty of surprises to go around. The zombies here are ruthless and will not hesitate to sneak up behind you free of detection, putting the player in a near constant state of fear. Oftentimes, the only indication you have that a zombie is near is a terrifying shriek heard off in the distance that slowly gets louder the closer it nears. The anxiety this causes is tremendous, and yet the scares rarely, if ever, feel cheap. If anything, they disprove the oft-misguided sentiment that modern games need high production value or action-packed cutscenes to be scary. ZombiU succeeds without any of those things because the world and its inhabitants are scary enough on their own. It's a testament to just how well the game manages to reel players in and hold their interest, despite an unorthodox control scheme and multiple input methods. Design decisions that would typically irritate me in other games are somehow more forgivable here because it's survival horror and you're supposed to be at a disadvantage. In that way, it's almost like the game succeeds in spite of itself. The ideas are all there, but the execution just needs a few minor tweaks. If anything, future developers will be able to use this game as an example of how to better harness the system's strengths and limitations. Hardware issues aside, the biggest frustration I experienced was related to the game's layout, which is almost too linear for its own good. The only way to open up fast travel access to an area is by finding a hidden manhole nearby, most of which are obscured behind a series of barriers and winding air vents. While I admit the satisfaction of finding and unlocking one is unparalleled, the consequences of not doing so are having to backtrack 10 minutes every time you die. This becomes even more frustrating during the final sequence of the game, when fast travel becomes restricted to only 2 areas of the map. Die in Buckingham Palace and you'll be transported back to the safe house, a good 15-minute walk from where you were killed. Even the most clairvoyant of gamers won't be able to escape the occasional backtracking here and there, but the campaign still packs a good 15 to 20 hour punch, so I wouldn't say it detracts from the whole experience. Beating the game on normal also opens up a survival mode with permadeath, but that's probably best left to the criminally masochistic. In addition to the solo experience, the campaign also has an optional online component, where players can use spray paint to leave messages for their friends, choosing either to help or deliberately confuse them. On top of all that, there's also a local multiplayer portion, which provides a nice change-up from the usual zombie-style horde mode. This one pits players against each other in a game of capture the flag, with a few real-time strategy elements mixed in. It's a surprisingly exhilarating mode, and a rudimentary leveling system goes a long way towards adding replay value. In the end, though, it's not the multiplayer that's going to define ZombiU. It's not even the Wii U that will define it. ZombiU will be remembered for something much more important, something very few games this generation have been able to achieve: a true return to survival horror. For that reason and that reason alone, I say buy it. So that's my review. As you can see, I immensely enjoyed the game. I definitely think there's potential there if Ubisoft ever wanted to expand the game into a franchise, but in the meantime, I'm just happy to have one hardcore game for the Wii U. As always, thanks for watching, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will try my best to answer them.